Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Kailin and I post new videos every single week. And I usually post videos about intuitive eating and eating disorder recovery. So if that's something that you're interested in, I would love for you to click onto that subscribe button down below and become part of our little family. I sat down here in my pajamas. I'm wearing hoodies and a sweats, and I have to take off my pants because I'm so fucking hot. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. I instantly feel so much better. So if you're ever too hot and you can, just take off your pants, I guess. If you follow me on Instagram or TikTok, you would have seen that yes, I did dye my hair, and it's this beautiful kind of like copper blonde color, which I'm obsessed with. It kind of seems like a little bit brown as well. It's got a lot going on and I really love it. But today we are here in the little therapy nook in my office because we are going to be talking about how to deal with diet comments, which, God, in the new year, there's a lot of them. Even though it's February currently, I feel like the new year buzz is still among us. And sometimes we just need a little bit of a reminder of like how to deal with these comments, why people make these comments, etc. Unsolicited dieting advice can come from so many people. It can come from doctors, from family, from friends, from strangers, and it can manifest in very, very strange places and in very strange ways. And oftentimes I feel like these statements really catch us off guard, and they can be extremely triggering for those who have a history with disordered eating or just in general don't feel great about their body and are also trying to move closer to intuitive eating, which is listening to our body instead of listening to diet culture bullshit. And I think these comments suck the most when they come from people that we trust or people that we love. And fat phobia is actually just so ingrained in our society. Did you hear that? And also ingrained in like our everyday speech that a lot of people, when they make fat phobic comments, they actually think that they are helping you when in fact they're harming you. You know, commenting on other people's bodies, on other people's food is just never okay. And if you didn't know that, now we know something new. So fat phobia can also manifest in the following. This is something that we hear a lot of the time. You know, I'm just concerned for X, Y, and Z's health. I'm just concerned for my daughter's health. I'm just concerned for my wife's health. Whatever it might be, we hear these statements a lot. And a lot of these statements really mask as empathy, right? They sound empathetic of, oh, I care for you, which is why I'm being cruel, or I care for you, which is why I'm saying all of these hurtful things. A lot of the time it masks as empathy. And I find that these comments are extremely dangerous because there's also an element of gaslighting within these comments. So the person receiving these comments usually feels hurt, judged, or in general, just the negative effect of these questions. Whereas the person giving this comment usually feels like they're coming from a place of love, empathy, or at least that's what they're telling themselves to make themselves feel better. And even though a lot of comments can come from people that we trust, people within our families or our circle of friends, fat phobic comments are often made a lot by strangers as well. Aubrey Gordon, who is one of my favorite authors and one of my favorite podcasters on Maintenance Phase, writes in her novel What We Don't Talk About When We Talk About Fat of instances when she's grocery shopping, right? And strangers have literally pulled food items out of her cart. And she also explains how there are moments where people yell obscenities at her on the street just for walking, just for being present, and just for living in a fat body. She also writes about how somebody showed her unsolicited photos of a very dangerous procedure because they thought Gordon might want to undergo this surgery in order to become thin and healthy. What I want to tell you right now is that thinness does not equal health. Somebody can be thin and unhealthy, and we know this. Just like somebody can be fat and healthy. And I repeat myself all of the time in videos like this, but I think that this kind of repetition is super important. So whether it's your grandmother telling you that you have to lose weight, or there is somebody in the grocery store literally pulling items from your cart, you deserve better. None of these behaviors are okay. And diet culture, trust me, can be extremely difficult to navigate, especially when it comes from different angles. So I really hope that this video gives you a little bit of help and a little bit of confidence navigating these triggers in the real world. I want to touch briefly on disordered eating, and there will be definitely a vein throughout this video, but commenting on somebody's body or their body size or their food intake, people have this assumption, as I mentioned, that it's going to make this person more healthy, when in fact, these comments and these negative comments about somebody's body and food actually usually triggers disordered eating as well as disordered thoughts. And maybe these thoughts and behaviors were already present. We never know what's going on in somebody's mind. Or perhaps these thoughts and behaviors mirror what that individual thought about themselves. Or maybe this individual has no history with disordered eating, but hearing about those comments about their food makes them overthink what is on their plate, therefore potentially causing catastrophic thinking around food and body. So when somebody says something to you that is triggering, the first thing that I want you to do is, on your own, in that beautiful mind of yours, identify the disordered logic in this thought. And I'm going to give you some examples, so don't worry about that. And then the next thing I want you to do is sit with this thought before you begin to question it. We want to poke holes in logic. And when it comes to diet culture and eating disorders, they often don't really deal with logic. Instead, they deal with emotions, making you feel not good enough in your body, that you have to change, making you feel like you're not enough, or that you're inadequate, or that people would love you more if you were in a certain body, etc. All of these are rooted in how we feel and rooted in our emotions. Eating disorders don't like logic. They really don't. And neither do people who are very immersed into diet culture. But when we hear these triggers, we have to remember, you're not in control of what other people say. You're also not in control of what other people do. It's not your fault. And it also doesn't mean that we're healing badly if we have these triggers around us, or if they cause a slip in our recovery, because healing is not linear. Ever. So let's give an example of a disordered thought and kind of poking holes within the logic. So let's say we're sitting at the dinner table and somebody says we should burn off that huge meal that we just ate. And when we're looking at the logic of this statement, I really want to remind you that movement and food are two separate things. They're two separate things. You don't get to eat more if you move more. You don't have to eat less if you don't move. These things don't go together. A big plate of food or a meal out or getting a takeaway is not a reward for moving your body, nor should it ever be. It is literally just a plate of food. It's sustenance, and it's not that serious. Also, let's take a perspective shift here for a second. Is it not a privilege to have this nice big full plate of food? Isn't it a privilege that we get to share food with people that we love? If you are struggling with food guilt or with these triggering comments, try your best to come from a place of gratitude, because it's very difficult, again, for our eating disorder, our inner critic, to sort of see gratitude and try to twist it. And if this is something that's new to you and you're beginning to practice gratitude and you're beginning to poke holes in people's statements and stories, know that it's not easy and know that it's going to take time. Just because we want to believe in one thing doesn't mean that we're going to believe it in just a split second. We believe what we repeat. And so repeat these things to yourself often. Repeat your gratitude. Repeat that food is just food, that food is not good nor bad. And trust me, over time, you will begin to believe those things. Something else that I really want everybody to be wary of is, hitting the gym after you have a meal of some kind, or feeling like you have to go and exercise if you have something in particular, or depending on how full you feel, etc. Having a positive relationship with movement is important. And ask yourself, do you really want to punish yourself through movement, or do you want to do movement when it sounds enjoyable to you? Now, let's create another scenario, a scenario that drives me up the fucking wall. Let's say the last time you hung out with somebody, they commented on your weight gain. And now you're thinking about trying to lose weight before you see that person again, or fasting, or whatever it might be. If you restrict your food intake, if you fast, this is most likely, in most cases, going to cause you to binge and for your hunger cues to be totally out of whack. You have to trust your body and not your mind in this case. When your body tells you that it's hungry, trust it. Your body has never done anything to let you down, hopefully or purposefully. Get a cut on our finger, our body tries to heal us. When there is an infection, your body tries to fight against it. Your body is not creating things to harm you, it's helping you in every way. So trust it when it asks for certain foods, trust it when it asks for more food, and know that your mind does not always know what's best. Restriction is literally the devil. I think that it's a great, what is that, like a metaphor, analogy? Yeah, analogy, I think. It's a great analogy to use when we're thinking of like the devil on our shoulder. What good has restriction ever brought us? Headaches, dizziness, obsession around food, critical thoughts. really all it does is make you totally obsessed about what goes into your body. And the average person does not think about food 24/7 all the time. And if food is on your mind 24/7 all the time, it goes to show that one, restriction might be at play somehow. Two, maybe you're not eating the foods that you actually want or the ones that satisfy you. And three, just addressing your relationship with food and your body is definitely something that I would recommend doing in like a therapeutic environment of some kind. Instead of trying to find ways to make yourself smaller, try examining your friendships and relationships. No friend should be commenting on your body, period. No friend should be commenting on weight loss, weight gain, etc. No friend should be commenting on your food intake, whether you've eaten too much, etc. Friends are supposed to make you feel good. And if they don't make you feel good, then fucking bye to them. Their loss. Ask yourself if this person is somebody who has hurt you before. Don't give them second chances. Also ask yourself, do you feel comfortable telling this person that what they did or what they said hurt you? And if you don't feel comfortable, I would ask you to be a little bit curious as to why. And another question to ask ourselves, right, is this friend willing to learn? Because if they're not willing to learn, if they're not willing to follow boundaries, then they're not really a friend of yours. Human beings are intuitive creatures by nature. We are born intuitive eaters. When you think of a baby, whether they are having formula or breast milk, they cry when they're hungry, they stop when they're full. Their eating schedules are also all over the place. Sometimes a baby will eat consistently and then one day it wants a lot more and the next day it wants less. This is what intuitive eating looks like. As children and as babies, you allow your body's natural mechanisms dictate when we are hungry and also which foods can satisfy and nourish us. However, many of us, especially millennials, grew up in a home, went to school, saw things online that assigned food to a morality group. Food that is either good or food that is bad, sometimes foods, non-foods, all of this language that literally makes me want to yank my hair from my head. And a lot of the time, food that we really derive a lot of pleasure from was demonized the most in these households. And again, of course, I don't speak for everybody. I know that there were people who have been intuitively eating forever, people whose parents never dipped their toes into diet culture. But from the experiences that I've heard from my other millennial friends, and also the experiences that I hear from my clients who are from all sorts of different generations, it goes to show how detrimental these kinds of comments are within the home, how much they can fuck up your children. There was a very, very, very popular creator over here on YouTube who made a video with her toddler, and basically it was asking the toddler which food were healthy and which foods were unhealthy. And the little kid named popcorn as a healthy snack, and the mom was like, you know, like, okay, name another one, let's try again. Why are we teaching our toddlers the things that are good, the things that are bad? Why aren't we teaching them, you know, foods that make us feel good, foods that taste yummy? Why aren't we trying new recipes with them? Why are we trying to ruin their relationship with food when they don't even understand what like a vitamin or a mineral is? Anyway, a lot of these household environments create fear around food, also known as fear foods. And I do want to stress that nobody is born with a fear food. They are taught and they are learned. A lot of people's fear foods stem from what they learned or what they heard growing up. And usually it's things that they hear from authority figures, family, people that they look up to. And a lot of the language that is used, as I mentioned, is labeling food as good or labeling food as bad. And when you struggle with disordered eating, foods eaten in like a typical social setting can also become fear foods of yours. And the reason why social settings kind of increases the fear around food or the potential fear around food is because human beings are more likely to judge their own eating habits or the habits of others and vocalize this judgment in social settings. For example, say it's Christmas. I swear I hear this almost every Christmas, no matter what I say or do. And so in the end, it's just not my problem. But after Christmas dinner, people will be like, oh my God, I ate so much. I feel so full. Oh, like whatever. They're just going on and on and on about how full they feel. I don't think that this is a very interesting topic of conversation. And in fact, I think people say it because they almost feel like they are expected to say it, because every Christmas somebody talks about how full they are, and it just seems to be this habit and behavior that is continuing. We have other examples of this being like, oh, in the new year, I'm gonna have to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm gonna be rolling home, or I haven't eaten all day, I'm so excited for this meal. These are all disordered. Let me give you another example of, a social setting where people just feel the need to share their judgments with the world. Okay, it's a birthday. We're at a birthday party. We're all wearing cute little birthday hats. We're having a good time. Out comes birthday cake. A beautiful chocolate fudge cake. One of my favorites. Wonderful. But this cake at this birthday party, it brings up memories, maybe of somebody's parent who said maybe that cakes are just for special occasions, or that they are junk, or that they are bad, or that we should, watch how much cake we have, that sugar is bad, all of these kinds of things. So now, years later, again, you and me, we're at our friend's party, the cake is being brought out, but the person with disordered thoughts doesn't just see a beautiful chocolate cake that everybody is going to enjoy for this friend's birthday. What they see on that plate is shame, guilt, things that they shouldn't be doing, and suddenly that cake is no longer cake. This is a potential consequence of labeling food as good or bad. And so if you are somebody within your own interior dialogue labeling food as healthy or unhealthy, good or bad, or just putting food in whatever category it might be, just to remind yourself that all food is inherently morally neutral. And we are not good if we eat a salad, just like we are not bad if we eat cake. So let's talk a little bit about challenging fear foods, because that is one of the ways that we're able to challenge diet talk and be able to respond to it, is to have no more fears anymore and to tackle those on your own so that food has less control over you. What I usually recommend is to start off small. Choose things that bring you mild anxiety and expose yourself to those foods consistently. And I don't mean once a week. I mean a couple of times per week, every day if we can. And once those foods no longer scare you, to move on to something else, maybe a little bit higher anxiety. And as you continue down this path, you will be challenging multiple things at once or at different meals, and that's good. If you feel anxious when you're challenging fear foods, that's amazing. It's so amazing because it means that you are fighting that ED voice or your inner critic's voice, and you are breaking a rule that you've believed for a long time. So it's not going to be easy. Yes, you're going to feel anxious, but that anxiety goes away in time. Remind yourself of what you want to believe in. Remind yourself that food is nourishment. Nourishment for our body, for that beautiful brain of yours, your mind. Nourishment for your soul. Your body is way more valuable than any snide comment some relative is going to make. And something to consider is that most people will never put in the work to heal their relationship with food. And you know why? Because it's hard work. And so you are ahead of the game if you're working on healing your relationship with food. And even though other people around you might be stuck in disordered thoughts for the rest of their lives, you won't. And that is how you get your power back. So what happens when our loved ones are not really on board with us healing our relationship with food or our bodies? This actually happens a lot more than I would like to admit. First things first, like, why do people make these comments? As I mentioned before, a lot of people see it as small talk. A lot of people think that everybody criticizes themselves and has something that they hate about themselves. It is way more common to walk into a room, I'm gonna say of women because that is my own lived experience, but it's a lot more common to walk into this room and hear people criticizing themselves rather than complimenting themselves. We don't hear people compliment themselves a lot of the time when we should. And so people just become accustomed to critical talk. It kind of becomes their default, and they think that everybody else thinks about food and body in the same way that they do. But come on, talking about weight is so tiring and so boring. Imagine that's all you have to offer this world is your talk about weight gain and food. Is there nothing more to you? I don't believe that for a second. The second reason that people often make comments is because they are projecting. No person that has a good relationship with their body and a good relationship with food is ever going to comment on somebody else's body or food, right? It just doesn't make sense. So anybody who has a negative observation for you, just remind yourself that healthy people don't make comments like that. And we wish them the best and we move on. And as somebody who has been on the receiving end of these comments, it feels like you've done something wrong. When somebody comments on your food or comments on your body, I have this vivid memory of me seeing my grandmother. She's no longer with us. but I would go to her place and I would be helping her with something, and she would look at me and she would say, huh, you've gotten really big, haven't you? And there I was, 12 or 13 years old, completely unaware of my body in that moment. And then right away I felt wrong, I felt shame, I wanted to hide. And then when I went back home later to my dad's, I sat down at dinner and I didn't want to eat. Because what happened is I equated my grandmother's comment with me eating too much, and therefore my 13-year-old self was like, I can't eat because I'm too big. My dad gave her a real earful, which makes me very happy, because as a child, seeing somebody stand up to somebody that way is extremely empowering and helpful. But it also feels awkward, because you know what happened? I left my grandma's right away. Who wants to stick around and stay with somebody who just makes them feel like shit? Not this girl. But I think one of the issues that, like, being on the receiving end of these comments, like, it feels very isolating. It feels very targeted. And it's also difficult to talk to people about these kinds of triggers, because a lot of people don't understand why these are triggering. A lot of people just see it as normal life, when shouldn't we be questioning why this is normalized in the first place? Anyway, it can ruin the evening, it can ruin relationships, and it can create self-consciousness and self-loathing as well. And if you are an adult and you're dealing with food guilt, it can kind of feel like you're a child and you're breaking some kind of rule. And I mean, it's important to ask yourself, where do these rules come from? Where do they come from? Do they come from your parents? Do they come from the media? Do they come from your favorite influencer who said that she has to eat fruit before breakfast every single day because her digestion's gonna back up? By the way, that's not how our digestive system works, but whatever. You who is watching this video, I hope that you have some control over your life and the food that you eat. You're in control. Please be in control. Not your eating disorder, not a parent, but you. So let's talk about what we can do in these kinds of situations, like the actual meat of this video. Firstly, if this has ever happened to you, I just want to say that I'm really sorry. You deserve to feel comfortable and safe in your body while eating, and you should never ever feel judged. And again, the people making these comments, it's their burden to carry. We don't need to take that on ourselves. The next thing that I'm going to say is really hard, but it gets a lot easier with practice. I want you to try your best to not internalize or take to heart the comments that people make. Try your best to reframe the comments that somebody makes and see it not as a reflection of your body, but as a reflection of that person's damaged self or their damaged relationship with food and their own body. Also, see it as their ignorance as well. This allows you to put the fault on them instead of blaming yourself and feeling like you did something wrong. It is not your fault that somebody comments on your body. It's not your body's fault, and there's nothing wrong with you. But it sounds like that person is announcing to the world that they don't have a good relationship with themselves. And again, that's their own problem to deal with. And it might be frustrating and it might be triggering, but it's not your fault. The next way to deal with this, and one of the most important things, is to speak up if you feel like you can and set a boundary. You're not responsible how people take your boundaries, but you are responsible to set them. An example of setting a boundary in like a less explicit way is, hey, you know, when you commented on my food, that made me feel pretty bad. Like, could you not do that? So we're referencing a moment and we're asking that behavior to specifically stop. My favorite boundary, and the boundary that I have with every single individual that is in my life, is to not talk about bodies or food. There's a huge difference between saying like, oh my God, this food is so delicious, which again is something that I encourage. That kind of food talk I think is totally great and wonderful, versus saying, you know, I think I'm bad for having this. I don't want to hear that. Who wants to hear that? Especially when we're all eating the same thing and then we're like, hey, are we bad too? No comments about food or body. Try to have this boundary with every single person that you love. And again, if somebody doesn't want to put in the work to create a boundary with you, or they think your boundary is stupid, that is on them, truly. Something else that we can do outside of boundary setting, if that makes you a little bit uncomfortable, is simply not engage. And this is something that I definitely do depending on the circumstance. So somebody is talking about their diet or food or whatever it might be, and I just don't say anything. Conversations usually take two people. And so you switch the subject, Or if you just don't engage with any of the conversation at all and give no feedback and just move on to a different subject once they're done speaking, over time this person should get your message without you implementing a specific boundary. Another thing that we can do is literally remove yourself from the conversation. Say you're at a party and people are just talking about their diets or whatever it might be. Get up and go to the bathroom. Ground yourself with some affirmations. Let yourself know that food has no morality and you can eat whatever you want, and then go back out there when you feel like the conversation might have settled a little bit. And then the last thing, the spiciest thing, is basically just shutting down a comment or saying no, or that's not true, or like, believe what you want to believe, but don't put it on me. Sometimes just a blunt response can really shut people down. And of course it depends on the situation, but people are usually taken aback when somebody at the dinner table is anti-diet. Trust me. Been there. And so if you've reached a point in your journey where you feel more comfortable around your fear foods, or you feel more self-assured and ready to share more of your journey with other people, I think that that is awesome. Being an example of an intuitive eater is the best way to encourage other people to also intuitively eat. And perhaps you put so much work into your healing and into your relationship with food and yourself. And the people who are still critical of themselves or of food, they have so much to learn from you. And that doesn't mean that it's your responsibility to teach them. But again, I think leading by example is the best way to encourage other people to try intuitive eating, to be excited about it, and also see that it's the most human thing that we can do. We can also lead a little bit more explicitly as well by asking questions. An example of this is somebody says, oh my God, I'm being so bad by getting seconds. An example of a response can be, what do you mean? I'm glad you're enjoying the food. To paint that situation in that person's head as a positive thing instead of something that is negative. Pointing out the absurdities of diet culture in like a very casual way usually stumps people and actually makes them think for themselves. And it can also be eye-opening for people who never get called on their bullshit. And it can also open this discussion, if you feel comfortable for it, about intuitive eating, about food shame and food guilt, and to give us the opportunity to potentially shed more light on why having just a peaceful relationship with food is so much healthier for us than having a restrictive one. You deserve to feel comfortable in your relationships, and you deserve to feel safe in your social situations as well. And you especially deserve to feel safe while eating. So I hope this video gives us a couple of tools on how to deal with these comments, on why people make these comments, on some ways you can work on your own relationship with food. And if you have anything that you would like to add or anything that you think would be helpful for other people who are currently struggling or trying to repair their relationship with food, you can leave any kind comment down below, any piece of advice. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in my next video, and make sure to do something kind for yourself. Bye, friends.